On a chilly morning in London, a sharp wind wove through the city streets, carrying the scent of damp stone and the faint aroma of brewing coffee. The bustling city carried on as always, its iconic red buses trundling through intersections and pedestrians marching briskly to their destinations. Outside Kensington Palace, a small crowd of tourists and locals gathered, hoping for a glimpse of one of the most beloved members of the royal family, Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Kate had made it a point to step out that morning to visit a local charity supporting unhoused individuals. Known for her compassion and tireless advocacy for mental health and homelessness issues, she often found time to connect with those society tended to overlook. Wrapped in a tailored coat with her signature grace, she exuded warmth as she greeted the people waiting for her arrival. Among the crowd, huddled on a patch of cold concrete not far from the palace gates, was a man who seemed utterly detached from the excitement around him. His clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, a patchwork of mismatched garments clearly chosen more for function than form. His face was weathered, marked by deep lines that told the story of many hard years. His name was Michael, a man whose life had once been stable but had taken a turn for the worse when a series of unfortunate events left him without a home or family. Michael had heard about Kate Middleton's reputation for kindness, but to him, the royals were an untouchable class. They lived in castles, hosted grand dinners, and spoke on topics far removed from the daily struggles of people like him. He harbored no bitterness, though. Life had taught him that anger only added weight to the burdens he already carried. That morning, however, something unusual stirred in Michael. As he watched the crowd gather, he saw Kate herself step out of a black car, her presence immediately commanding attention. She wasn't surrounded by an overbearing entourage, just a few discreet security personnel who blended into the background. Michael was struck by her approachable demeanor. Despite the barriers of class and circumstance, she moved with the grace of someone who genuinely cared. Without fully understanding why, Michael stood up. He didn't plan his next move. Maybe it was curiosity or a fleeting sense of hope, but before he knew it, he found himself shuffling through the crowd, edging closer to the princess. Kate was speaking to a group of volunteers when she noticed him. Her sharp eyes, softened by a genuine smile, immediately focused on Michael. Something about his hesitant approach caught her attention. She stepped away from the cluster of volunteers and approached him. "Hello there," she said, her voice warm but measured. "What's your name?" Michael blinked, startled that she was addressing him directly. "Michael," he replied, his voice hoarse from disuse in the cold. "Lovely to meet you, Michael," Kate said, tilting her head slightly. "How are you doing today?" He hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I'm getting by," he finally muttered, his hands fidgeting nervously. Kate nodded, her expression a perfect blend of interest and concern. "It's a cold morning to be outside. Have you had something warm to eat?" Michael shook his head. "Not yet. Maybe later, if I can manage." For a moment, Kate paused, studying him with an intensity that made Michael both uncomfortable and strangely comforted. He could see that she wasn't just hearing his words. She was listening to him in a way most people didn't. Then, to his own surprise, Michael spoke again, blurting out a question that had sprung unbidden into his mind. "Can you give me $1?" The words hung in the air, an odd mixture of boldness and desperation. The crowd, which had been murmuring softly, fell silent. Even Michael seemed taken aback by his own audacity. He hadn't meant to ask for money, it just slipped out. And of all people, he had asked a princess. For a second, Kate didn't react, her expression unreadable. Then she did something that no one expected. Instead of brushing off the question or offering a polite excuse, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet. From it, she extracted a crisp note. Not $1, but a 10-pound note. Michael stared at the money, dumbfounded. I didn't mean... Kate gently pressed the bill into his hand, cutting off his protest. "It's not just about the money, Michael," she said softly. "This is for you, but it's also a reminder that you matter. Everyone does." The crowd erupted into murmurs, some people reaching for their phones to capture the moment. But Kate wasn't finished. She took a step closer, lowering her voice so that only Michael could hear. "It's easy to feel invisible, isn't it? Like the world's too busy to notice you?" Michael nodded, his throat tightening. He couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to him like this, with such genuine empathy. "I want you to know," Kate continued, her eyes locking onto his, "that people do notice, and I'm one of them. This 10 pounds might not change your life, but if there's anything else I can do to help, please tell me." Michael's eyes filled with tears, though he tried to blink them away. "Thank you," he whispered. "You've already done more than I deserve." Kate reached out, briefly touching his arm. "Never think you don't deserve kindness, Michael. No one's life is without value." As she stepped back to rejoin the volunteers, the crowd parted to let her through. But the moment lingered in the air, a quiet testament to the power of compassion. For Michael, that simple act of kindness felt monumental. He clutched the 10-pound note as though it were a lifeline, not just because of its monetary value, but because of what it symbolized: recognition, dignity, and hope. In the days that followed, Michael's encounter with Kate Middleton became a sensation. News outlets picked up the story, and headlines proclaimed, "Princess of Wales gives homeless man hope." Some praised her for her humanity, while others criticized the gesture as symbolic rather than practical. But for Michael, the critics didn't matter. The encounter spurred a series of small but significant changes in his life. Inspired by Kate's words, he reached out to the charity she had been visiting that day. The staff welcomed him with open arms, helping him access resources he had previously been too proud or too defeated to seek. Slowly but surely, he began piecing his life back together. Kate, meanwhile, continued her advocacy for homelessness awareness, often reflecting on her conversation with Michael. "It's not just about policies or programs," she said in an interview months later. "It's about reminding people that everyone deserves to be seen and heard, no matter their circumstances." For Michael, the memory of that cold morning outside Kensington Palace remained vivid. The princess's unexpected response had shocked him, not because of the money she gave, but because of the dignity she restored in him. And as he worked to rebuild his life, he carried her words with him, a reminder that even in the darkest times, a small act of kindness could spark a new beginning. The wind had a sharp bite as Michael wandered the streets of London, his thoughts consumed by his encounter with Kate Middleton. The moment lingered in his mind like a soft ember refusing to die, casting warmth over his otherwise cold existence. He had replayed their conversation countless times, her words resonating deeply. "You matter. Everyone does." The money she gave him was still folded neatly in his pocket. He hadn't spent it, not because he didn't need to, but because it felt sacred. It was more than a piece of currency. It was a symbol, a reminder that someone had seen him as a person, not as a problem to avoid. For someone like Michael, who had spent years on the fringes of society, those few minutes of genuine connection had reshaped the way he saw himself. But as the days passed, the practicalities of his life began to press on him. The streets were unforgiving, and every step felt heavier under the weight of his struggle. Michael knew he had to decide what to do next. The idea of asking for help wasn't easy. Pride and shame were twin burdens he had carried for years. Yet Kate's words echoed in his mind. "Never think you don't deserve kindness." One evening, as the city lights began to glow against the dusk, Michael found himself standing outside the charity Kate had been visiting that day. The building was modest but inviting, with warm light spilling from its windows and the faint hum of conversation drifting through the air. His hands trembled as he reached for the door handle, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. Inside, he was greeted by a volunteer with a kind smile. "Hello there," she said, her voice gentle. "How can we help you?" Michael hesitated, unsure how to articulate his needs. I was here the day the princess visited," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She told me to reach out if I needed help." The volunteer's smile widened, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "You must be Michael! We've been hoping you'd come in. Let me get someone to speak with you." Before he knew it, Michael was seated in a small office with a social worker named Sarah, a warm and empathetic woman who seemed to genuinely care about his story. She listened intently as he recounted his life, how he had lost his job after the company he worked for went bankrupt, how his marriage had crumbled under the strain, and how he had eventually found himself with nowhere to go. Sarah didn't interrupt or rush him, allowing him to share his pain without judgment. When he finished, she leaned forward, her tone resolute. "Michael, thank you for trusting me with your story. You've been through so much, but the fact that you're here shows incredible strength. Let's work together to get you back on your feet." Over the next few weeks, Michael's life began to shift in ways he hadn't thought possible. The charity helped him secure temporary housing, a small but clean room where he could finally sleep without fear of the cold or the dangers of the streets. They connected him with mental health support, where he began unpacking the years of trauma he had carried silently. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of stability returning to his life. But it wasn't just the charity's assistance that fueled his transformation. It was the memory of Kate Middleton's kindness that drove him to keep going. Whenever the weight of his circumstances threatened to overwhelm him, he would think back to her words, "This is for you, but it's also a reminder that you matter." Those words became his mantra, a lifeline he clung to during his darkest moments. Meanwhile, the story of Michael and Kate's encounter continued to circulate in the media. It had sparked a larger conversation about homelessness, with many praising Kate for her compassion and humanity. The story also drew attention to the systemic issues that contributed to homelessness, prompting discussions about how society could do more to support its most vulnerable members. Kate herself remained deeply affected by her conversation with Michael. She often reflected on the encounter, using it as a touchstone in her advocacy work. In speeches and interviews, she spoke passionately about the importance of addressing homelessness, not just as a social issue, but as a moral imperative. "Homelessness isn't just about a lack of shelter," she said during a televised event. "It's about a loss of community, a loss of identity, and often a loss of hope. We must remember that behind every statistic is a person with a story, a person who deserves dignity and compassion." Her words resonated widely, inspiring a surge of public interest in volunteering and supporting homelessness charities. Donations to organizations skyrocketed, and more people began stepping forward to help, whether through financial contributions, volunteering, or simply acknowledging the humanity of those they once ignored. For Michael, the ripple effects of Kate's kindness were transformative. He began volunteering at the same charity that had helped him, wanting to give back and support others who were struggling as he once had. He discovered that he had a natural gift for connecting with people, his own experiences allowing him to empathize in a way that felt genuine and meaningful. One day, while helping serve meals at the charity's community center, Michael noticed a young woman sitting alone at a table, her head bowed low. She reminded him of himself not long ago, lost and unsure where to turn. He approached her, offering a warm smile. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, startled, but nodded. "Sure." Michael sat down, his demeanor calm and reassuring. "I'm Michael," he said. "What's your name?" "Emily," she replied, her voice barely audible. They began to talk, and as Emily shared her story, Michael listened intently, just as Kate had once listened to him. He offered words of encouragement, sharing bits of his own journey to show her that change was possible. By the end of their conversation, Emily's expression had softened, and she thanked him for taking the time to talk to her. As Michael walked home that evening, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For so long, he had felt invisible, his life reduced to survival. But now, he was part of something bigger, a network of people helping one another rebuild their lives. And it all traced back to that fateful day outside Kensington Palace. Months turned into years, and Michael's life continued to improve. He eventually found steady employment with the charity, where he became a community outreach coordinator. His role involved connecting with people experiencing homelessness and helping them access the resources they needed. He was tireless in his efforts, driven by a deep sense of purpose and gratitude. Kate Middleton, too, continued her work with unwavering dedication. She and Michael crossed paths again at a charity event where she recognized him immediately. Her face lit up with a smile as she approached him. "Michael, it's so wonderful to see you," she said warmly. Michael's heart swelled with emotion. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly. "I can't thank you enough for what you did for me that day. It changed everything." Kate placed a hand on his arm, her expression sincere. "You changed your own life, Michael. I just gave you a little push. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished." The two spoke for a while, catching up on their respective journeys. Kate listened with genuine interest as Michael shared stories of the people he had helped and the progress he had made. Their conversation was a testament to the power of human connection. a reminder that even the smallest gestures could have far-reaching effects. As the event concluded, Michael watched Kate as she mingled with other attendees, her presence radiating the same warmth and authenticity that had touched his life so profoundly. He realized that her kindness wasn't just a momentary act, it was a way of being, a commitment to seeing the humanity in everyone she met. For Michael, the encounter reinforced his belief in the importance of paying it forward. He continued his work with unwavering determination, knowing that every act of kindness had the potential to change a life. And as he walked home that evening, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, he couldn't help but smile. Kate Middleton's response that day had indeed been shocking, not because of the money she gave, but because of the compassion she showed. It was a reminder that no matter how far apart our lives may seem, the simple act of seeing and valuing one another can bridge even the widest divides. And in that truth, Michael found not just hope, but a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the lessons of that day with him for the rest of his life. Michael's life, now firmly rooted in his newfound stability, continued to evolve in ways he could have never imagined. The streets, once a constant reminder of his hardships, had become a part of his past, a past he carried not as a burden, but as a source of wisdom. His journey was a testament to resilience, the power of compassion, and the enduring influence of a single moment of connection. Though his days were now filled with work, outreach, and personal growth, Michael often found himself reflecting on the life he had once led. It wasn't out of regret, but rather an understanding of how far he had come and how deeply interconnected his past and present were. Each person he met during his outreach work brought back flashes of his own struggles, the hopelessness, the loneliness, and the invisible walls that separated him from the rest of society. One particular day, Michael stood near a crowded intersection in central London. It was a spot where he often found people in need, quietly sitting against the walls, hoping for change or simply enduring the world passing them by. Among them, he noticed a man who couldn't have been much older than himself, wrapped in a frayed coat and holding a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry and homeless, anything helps." Michael approached slowly, aware of how startling it could be to have someone interrupt the isolation that so often defined life on the streets. "Hello," he said gently. "Do you mind if I sit with you?" The man looked up, his eyes wary but not unkind. "Sure," he said after a moment. Michael lowered himself onto the cold pavement, leaning against the wall beside the man. "I'm Michael," he said, extending a hand. The man hesitated before shaking it. "Tom," he replied. As they talked, Michael learned that Tom had been living on the streets for just over a year after losing his job during a series of layoffs. His savings had quickly evaporated, and without family to turn to, he had found himself without options. Michael listened intently, nodding as Tom spoke. He recognized the pain in Tom's voice, the quiet resignation that came from feeling unseen and unworthy. "You know," Michael said after a pause, "I was sitting in a spot not too different from this one not long ago. Things felt pretty bleak. I didn't think anyone cared." Tom looked at him, surprise flickering across his face. "You? You don't look like you've ever lived this life." Michael smiled softly. "I did, for years. But someone reminded me that I mattered, and it changed everything." Tom frowned, his skepticism evident. "Someone reminded you? What does that even mean?" Michael leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "It means that someone took the time to see me, not as a problem or a statistic, but as a person. It was a simple gesture, but it gave me the push I needed to believe things could get better." Tom didn't respond immediately, his eyes studying Michael as though trying to decipher whether his story was genuine. Finally, he sighed. "I don't even know where to start." "That's the hardest part," Michael admitted, "but you don't have to do it alone. There are people who want to help, myself included." The conversation continued, and by the time Michael stood to leave, Tom had agreed to visit the charity where Michael worked. It was a small victory, but one that carried immense weight. As Michael walked away, he felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the progress he had made in his own life, but for the opportunity to help others find their way. Meanwhile, Kate Middleton's efforts to address homelessness continued to gain momentum. Her advocacy had expanded beyond public appearances and speeches. She had become directly involved in initiatives aimed at creating sustainable solutions. One such initiative was the establishment of a transitional housing program, a project she had championed with unwavering determination. The program, aptly named Second Steps, was designed to provide temporary housing while offering comprehensive support services, including mental health care, job training, and financial counseling. Kate believed deeply in the idea that stability was the foundation upon which people could rebuild their lives. During the launch event for Second Steps, Kate delivered a heartfelt speech that resonated with everyone in attendance. "Homelessness is not a personal failure," she said. "It is a societal issue that requires all of us to act with compassion and urgency. Every person deserves a second chance, and together we can create a world where no one is left behind." Among the attendees was Michael, who had been invited to share his story as a testament to the program's potential. Standing before the crowd, he felt a mixture of nerves and pride. Public speaking wasn't something he had ever envisioned for himself, but the opportunity to give back in this way felt deeply meaningful. As he spoke, he recounted his journey, the struggles, the moments of despair, and the turning point that had set him on a path of healing. He described his encounter with Kate, how her kindness had shocked him into believing in himself again. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Kate approached him afterward, her smile warm and genuine. "Michael," she said, "you've become such an inspiration. Your courage and dedication are remarkable." "Thank you," he replied, his voice steady despite the emotion welling in his chest. "But I couldn't have done it without you. That day changed everything." Kate shook her head gently. "You had the strength within you all along. I just reminded you it was there." Their conversation was brief, but it solidified the bond they had formed, a connection born from a moment of vulnerability and compassion that had grown into something far greater. As Second Steps gained traction, it began transforming lives across London. The program's success drew attention from other regions, inspiring similar initiatives in cities around the country. Kate's leadership had sparked a movement, and the stories of those who had been helped by the program became a powerful testament to its impact. Michael, now a key advocate for the program, found himself busier than ever. He traveled to schools, community centers, and even corporate offices, sharing his story and encouraging others to support the cause. Each time he spoke, he saw the ripple effect of his words. People moved to take action, whether by volunteering, donating, or simply treating unhoused individuals with greater empathy. Despite his growing responsibilities, Michael never lost sight of the individuals he was working to help. He made it a point to spend time on the ground, talking to people who were still navigating the challenges he had once faced. Each conversation deepened his resolve, reminding him of the humanity at the heart of his work. One particularly memorable encounter occurred on a rainy evening outside a train station. Michael noticed a young couple huddled together under a tattered blanket, their belongings packed into a single suitcase. The sight was achingly familiar, and he approached them with the same gentle kindness that had once been shown to him. "Hi there," he said softly. "I'm Michael. Are you two all right?" The woman looked up, her eyes wary. "We're fine," she said quickly, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Michael crouched down to their level, his expression open and non-judgmental. "I've been where you are," he said. "I know it's not easy to trust people, but I want to help if I can." Over time, his sincerity broke through their defenses and they began to open up. Their names were Ellie and Sam, and they had been evicted from their apartment after Sam lost his job. With no savings and no family nearby, they had been living on the streets for weeks, struggling to find shelter and work. Michael listened carefully, offering words of encouragement and practical advice. Before leaving, he gave them his contact information and urged them to visit the charity. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "There are people who care." A week later, Ellie and Sam walked through the doors of the charity, hesitant but hopeful. Michael greeted them personally, guiding them through the intake process and connecting them with the resources they needed. Watching their transformation over the following months was one of the most rewarding experiences of his life. Kate, too, continued to expand her efforts, partnering with organizations across the globe to address the root causes of homelessness. Her work brought her to cities far beyond London, where she met with leaders, advocates, and individuals experiencing homelessness to better understand the complexities of the issue. One visit took her to a shelter in New York City, where she spent hours speaking with residents and staff. The experience reinforced her belief that homelessness was a universal challenge, one that required both systemic change and personal compassion. In an interview shortly after her visit, Kate reflected on the progress that had been made and the work that still lay ahead. "We've come a long way," she said, "but there's so much more to do. Ending homelessness isn't just about providing shelter. It's about restoring dignity, rebuilding lives, and creating a society where everyone feels valued." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring a new wave of support for homelessness initiatives around the world. Donations poured in, volunteer numbers surged, and countless lives were touched by the growing movement. As the years passed, Michael and Kate's paths continued to intertwine, their shared commitment to addressing homelessness forging a bond that transcended their vastly different worlds. Michael often marveled at the unlikely trajectory his life had taken, a journey that began on a cold London street and led him to a place of purpose, hope, and connection. Though their lives were shaped by very different experiences, Michael and Kate shared a profound understanding of the power of kindness. It was a force that could bridge divides, heal wounds, and ignite change in even the most unlikely circumstances. And as they each continued their work, they remained steadfast in their belief that no one was beyond hope and no act of compassion was ever too small. Their stories, intertwined by fate and fueled by shared humanity, became a testament to the enduring impact of seeing and valuing one another, a lesson that rippled outward, touching lives far beyond their own. In the end, it wasn't just about the dollar, the 10-pound note, or even the gesture itself. It was about the simple truth that everyone matters, and that truth had the power to change the world. As Michael's role within the charity grew, so too did his understanding of the intricate web of challenges that led people to homelessness. It wasn't just about the loss of a job or a home. It was often a cascade of events: mental health struggles, lack of social support, systemic barriers, and the crushing weight of stigma. Each story he encountered deepened his resolve, and he began advocating for more holistic approaches to addressing homelessness. One of Michael's most ambitious projects was a community reintegration initiative, which aimed to help individuals not only find housing, but also rebuild their sense of belonging. He recognized that for many, the transition from homelessness to stability wasn't just about having a roof over their heads. It was about rediscovering their place in the world. The program paired participants with mentors who could guide them through challenges, from navigating job applications to fostering social connections. Among the program's early participants was a man named Raj, a former teacher who had lost his home after battling severe depression. Raj had been hesitant to join the program, his confidence shattered by years of feeling invisible. But through the mentorship and support he received, he began to find his footing again. Within months, Raj was not only housed, but also volunteering as a tutor for children in the community, reigniting his passion for teaching. Watching Raj thrive was one of the proudest moments of Michael's career, a tangible reminder of the transformative power of compassion and opportunity. Meanwhile, Kate Middleton's advocacy work continued to inspire change on a global scale. She had recently launched a groundbreaking initiative called Empower Futures, which focused on addressing homelessness among young people. The program was designed to intervene early, providing education, mental health support, and career training to prevent vulnerable youth from falling through the cracks. One of the initiative's most impactful elements was its focus on storytelling. Young people who had experienced homelessness were invited to share their journeys, highlighting not only the challenges they had faced, but also their resilience and aspirations. Kate believed that these stories had the power to shift public perceptions, dismantling stereotypes and fostering empathy. At the program's launch event, Kate invited Michael to speak. He stood before an audience of policymakers, educators, and philanthropists, his voice steady as he recounted the impact of Kate's words on his life. "What changed everything for me," he said, "was being seen. It reminded me that I was more than my circumstances. That's what Empower Futures is doing for young people. It's showing them that they are seen, valued, and capable of achieving great things." The applause that followed was thunderous, but for Michael, the most meaningful moment came afterward when a young girl approached him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "Hearing your story makes me believe I can have a future too." As Michael left the event that evening, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. His journey, shaped by pain and redemption, had become a beacon for others. And with each life he touched, the ripples of that one extraordinary moment with Kate Middleton continued to spread, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and human connection. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on a homeless man asking Kate Middleton for $1? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.